Alright, hello, this is Josh at Logic Chronicles, and I'm going to show you some stuff I added to the dialogue system, alright? So the first thing here is some animation. So if you look here, all of a sudden the character is now animated and talking, looks a lot nicer. And just to show you, I threw kind of like a first-person view in here too, just to kind of show you kind of what it looks like again. And there's that. But you can see it switches animations depending on, you know, what's being said. It's just something to kind of make it look a little bit nicer. Alright, there's that, and then there's another thing I did, which, if I go over here, start talking to this, notice all of a sudden his mouth is moving right now. Right? So I come over here, if I go like that, yeah, it still doesn't look all that great, but you can kind of see what's going on, right? Alright, there we go. See how his jaw is moving, his facial expressions are kind of changing a little bit. Figured out how to do that. And if you're wondering, what I did was I got this from Blender, that I was working in Blender, and these animations in this character right here I got from Mixamo. Alright, mostly because that was free, and the monkey is something that's in Blender, and I just kind of manipulated it just to get that going. Alright, so I'll show you what I was working on. Now, what I did was I created a separate function library right here, literally just for this one function, and I moved the string to time text kind of converter thing function that we had. I threw it in here, kind of rearranged it a bit, clamped it, threw it in here, just to kind of get it so I can change it here instead of changing anywhere else, because I ended up using it twice in 2 different places. In the first place is I replaced the old where is it? Not necessarily old, but over this widget, I replaced it with right here. So I called out this function right here. I threw it over here. All right. I put it in there this time. So that way it'll do that. I can change it here manually, and not have to worry about changing it anywhere else. All right. That's one thing I did. Another thing I did was, this is new, I just added this over here. On the control widget, I kind of just ignored his input movement, and then after that I delayed like 5 seconds, and then I stopped his character moving. That kind of stops, oh yeah, and then over here, when you give control back to the player, just kind of reset that back to normal so that the player can actually have input movements and stuff. The reason why is because if you don't do that, you'll get this little problem here. Let me just fix this up. And just break that. So if I'm playing, let's say I'm running, I'm trying to talk to this person. See how the characters, I'm not actually holding on the keyboard, he's just running by himself. Whereas if I do it this way, alright, now if I do this, come over here, hit that, stops immediately. And I'm still holding on the W key, you're just gonna have to trust me, but nothing's happening. You know, can't move. And that kind of helps out with that problem, so then after he's done, he can move around again. Because that's one thing I was kind of playing around with it this morning actually, and found out that, yeah, it needs to be fixed a little bit. Okay. And I believe that's it for changes that I've made to it. Although, let me see if I made this one change. Because if this hasn't been done already, you can do this because this is kind of not important. This right here, we are never using, so you can delete that at all. It was part of an idea I had just to kind of make it just to check to see if the conversations were actually, if this root dialogue had those conversations. So if you're talking to a specific NPC, you know, the idea would be you can kind of lock in whatever conversations you want the player to have. But realistically, it's kind of useless because over here in not that one, this one, in this structure, when we're actually like when the NPC is displaying all the dialogue and audio and stuff, we're telling it what to switch to. So it's kind of useless having that, because if it's just gonna switch right in anyway. And what I was gonna have it do is instead go when it's going over here, I was gonna have it do a check first, see if it actually had, or somewhere in this mess, I was gonna have it check to see if it even like had the conversation in there first, to make sure that you can have the if it was in the root dialogue context, you can actually have the conversation before you can actually even switch to that. But I'm not gonna be too worried about that right now. Okay. So that is that. That is all that. The only other thing that there's one thing you're gonna have to do before you actually make sure that this works. All right. Yeah, the rest of this should be exactly the same. The last thing you need to do is I went over here, not there, over here. What was it here? It was under mannequin. Under mannequin animations, you want to grab. This is for whatever character you're working on, actually. I did not do this. I did it mine in this character that I was working on, and I put mine in the test content right over here. I had to make a separate animation blueprint. And what you want to do is just make sure that right before you actually do anything, just put a slot in. So just slot, throw in a slot, and there you go. Just make sure you have that, because this is actually how it's going to actually play all the animations. Alright, so on the mannequin, what you would do is you would throw the slot right here. So you'd have your default whatever, and then you just throw it right here. And I'm not really that good with animations per se, so there's probably better ways of doing this, and you're gonna have to kind of play it out with whatever you're doing. But that's that idea. The other thing is you need animations to work with, and if you really need to, you can just click on one of these from over here and create, and turn it into animation montage, and you can use that to play with. For mine, what I did for my character is I imported some stuff. So I imported different types of talking and stuff like that from Mixamo, and I just went here and just kind of created some animation montages for a couple of them. And that's what I got there, and that's what I'm using. So it's very simple, just create. Alright. That's how you get that done. Now, the other thing I changed around, and one thing you want to watch about this is you want to go over to this variables. Now you want to come to the unit answer, and you are going to hit new variable, and then you're going to add this animation. Oh, I gotta make that first. That structure. Okay. First, you're gonna make this structure right here. Just new structure, whatever. You come here to animate. You're gonna name it animation montage struct. Okay. And this idea is, if you've actually worked with animation montages and like character motion and stuff like that, or character animations, you should be familiar with this. You're basically just gonna be able to reference whatever montage you want it to play. You're gonna put in the play rate. Make sure this is set to 1. That's very important. And then just leave that there. So it's just a name, a float, animation montage. Alright. That's how that works. Now, over in this one, in the unit answer struct, you want to make an integer map, and then have the animation montage struct that you just created right there. So that way we'll actually just pull this out and just kind of pass it through for variables. Alright. Now, I don't think so, but sometimes when you change structure around, sometimes the engine crashes. I'm sorry if it does for you. It shouldn't. But hopefully nothing bad happens. But you should just be able to come there, and you should come here, hit compile. If you get any sort of errors or anything, just kind of, you can fix it up. It shouldn't be too bad, because we only reference it a handful of places, just passing it through. And just to check, make sure you just go over to the widgets, just open these up, hit compile on each of them, just to make sure that nothing funny happens. Because again, sometimes when you're moving around structures, the engine just does weird things sometimes. Just know that. Alright. But that's that. I'm sorry if I'm going kind of fast. I actually do not have my other monitor and stuff right now. Some stuff kind of happened. So I'm just kind of winging it right now. I don't know why I'm compiling. Okay. But anyway. So after all that's done, First thing we're going to do is get the animations moving. So for the animations, just this one simple thing, display animation montage. It's going to have one input, unit answer, and the index. Okay. And then within here, it's going to break that structure. You're going to pull off here and then find the index of whichever animation is playing. And then you want to get the other actor and cast to a character, because this only will work if you're using you're using like a default character class or something of that from that parent class. So if you have your own like customized character that's not from this won't work. This will only work from something that derives from a character class. Okay. But you're really just gonna pull off and say play animation off the character. Alright. You want to have this branch, and this branch is just to check to see, make sure there is a montage that we can actually play. And then if that's true, we go ahead and play it. And another thing we're going to check is we're going to make sure that we actually found the index. So we want to make sure we find both of those. As long as you find the index and it has a valid montage, you just can play it. And just put the animation right there, play right there, the section name, and that should be good to go. And then you should be able to just test it. And that's what this test over here is for. You know, you should be able to do that. Hit this, and this character should just kind of spring to life now. The only thing you want to do is you kind of want to you might want to make your animation that you're using for it more subtle of some sort, so that way, like for generic characters, you know, you have animations that are probably going to loop around or something, and look a little nicer with that. And then for this one, or yeah, for that, and then have it for like important dialogue things where like you have a character that's actually moving around that needs the animation. You know, you might want to have something longer, because again, these are not actually made for the animation that I have right here. This is just very basic. You see, he's done speaking, but the animation is still going. You know, that's what you kind of want to watch out for. Just make sure your animation actually lines up with the length of that. And really, actually, what we could do is we can actually add a little more to that. And I'm going to do this on the spot. Hopefully this will work. I'm going to hit new function, and we'll say stop animation montage. And then we'll get the other character, or other actor, and then cast a character. Here and say stop montage. Ooh, which montage were we using? Let's see if there's another one. Stop. Stop animation. We'll see what this does. Let me just find another one. Because if that doesn't work, I'm gonna have to actually find another one to kind of actually throw in there. Okay, here we go. Current montage. And then we'll say stop montage. Hopefully this will look nice. We'll see what this does. I'm gonna plug it in right after this, so after it's all done. Alright, let's just see if it just cuts the animation right here. Come back to you. Yep, okay, it just cuts the animation now. There we go. Still doesn't look the best, he's just flipping back and forth, but you know, there's that situation settled. Now this next one, this more and then what I did was this is the first time you get the greeting. I'm trying to display the text for the first time it goes through, right? So that one's 0. Just copy paste, throw it down here, and then this time you're actually gonna add the index in there. And this would be for each time it cycles through. Now and then we're going to basically be doing the same thing right here with the morph targets. Now, this is interesting. I'm going to attempt to remember to throw a link in the description of one of the live streams that they had on Unreal, where someone was actually using morph targets and actually explaining how to use them and stuff. Now, what I've done is I went to Blender, I got the normal monkey head, and I created these morph targets. What the morph targets are, they basically just kind of move the vertexes around and stuff like that on the mesh, and just kind of help it, and just kind of move it so you can actually like deform it and put it in different positions and stuff like that. And I have a couple different shapes here. Like the first one is an O, open O. I just called it that. You can call it whatever you want. But it just kind of moves the mouth to make it an O shape. The W just kind of opens it wider, and this just kind of moves around the ears and facial features. And I thought it looked sad, so I called it sad. So if you do that, see how he has an O shape? And then if I go back, it can actually go into negative range. That looks very ugly. But you see how it's just kind of... See how we get like kind of like a talking motion out of that? Now the next one, I'm going to set this to 0. And we have the next one. It's just individual. Now you see how it's kind of like that? That looks kind of fair. Now the next one, the facial expressions, that looks ugly. And that looks fairly ugly. But you see how that works, right? But we got that. Now the idea will be to kind of... What does that auto do? Okay, anyway. I didn't say that. So what we're going to attempt to do is just slide these values up and down as the character is speaking. That way it'll achieve the effect of making it look as if it's talking. Okay? And this is kind of experimental. This is not the final product of how I'm going to do it. This right here is the final product-ish. Almost. The only thing I haven't finished it because ideally what I would do, right? Ideally what I would do was, if you looked in the Unreal stream that I should be displaying, there's a certain point where he shows all the different different things he had all here. So there's stuff for like eyebrows, mouth motions, and different things like that, right? What I can do is you can have all the different variables you need here. So what I would do, realistically, is when I actually have someone who actually made one like this, I'd figure out, okay, these are all the things that get in from morph targets. And then kind of figure out how to program all these variables into one structure or a handful of structures and stuff like that, and kind of manipulate everything as needed. Because this could be very complex as we need. This is just a simple version. But that's why I said this is just kind of a temporary thing. And then what I would do is I'd actually put the struct right here, or a map of structs, pull it off of it, and then throw that in here. And I will show you what this is later. And I'll actually pull that struct into there. This over here is something else. What that does in a second. Another thing I did was I made another actor right here, a character, with the monkey head in it. I'll open that up in a second. But that's basically all I did. I just literally just put the mesh in right there, that for the character, and I didn't really change much other than that, other than how to get this thing working. But that'd be for a moment. That'd be in a moment. So another thing I did was over in the library, interface function, put this variable right here, drive morph targets, or this function, drive morph targets. And what I did was I put in here the base sound, the curve vector, which is temporary right now, and then display text. Okay. Now, how we're gonna do this is over here, originally in the dialog component, this morph target function. What we need to do is we gotta actually find the sound we're trying to play. So we'll get the struct, break it, bring up the audio, find that index, find the voice of whichever recording we need, and then throw that for the sound. And then over here we're just getting display text, get the index, and throw it in there. Alright, now this float curve, for right now, I'll show you what I did to do these, but this is temporary. There should be a struct here, but this is just temporary for this. Alright, and it's just passing those two in. We're going to send this over to whichever character needs these kind of facial expressions and stuff. Okay? That is a lovely sound outside. Alright, so now over to the actual monkey. If I come over here, you don't need to see that yet. Come over here, this is all I'm doing. I'm getting the actual event, the drive morph target event, or interface message event thing. And we're going to take these variables again. This should be a structure at some point, but it's not for now. And we're going to pass these in to this macro. This can't be a function because it's going to be time driven, so it can't be a function, it has to be a macro. But you'll see this is going to be pretty nice. There's several things going on here. Okay. Now, first thing I did was check to make sure that the sound is valid. The reason why I did that is because this is all going to be driving off the sound. How long the sound is going to be playing for. That's how long this motion is actually supposed to be driving for. Okay? So if I come off of this, right, if I throw in sound here, this display text is for a default sound, really. So if it's valid, I guess what I just said before, that was kind of not true, but oh well. Just ignore that. But anyway, so if you look here, right, we're gonna take the time converter text again, and we're gonna get a sound. We're gonna get an amount of time after that. If not, then we're gonna take this base sound and we're gonna get its duration. Check if it's valid. We have this local float, which you can keep track of that. So basically, if there's a sound that's coming in, like an actual recorded sound, it's just gonna put that and assign this variable to that. If there is no sound, it's gonna take this string and just put in a default amount of time in there that we have. That should be before it switches. Now we have another local float. We're going to set this to 0. Okay. And what we'll do is, this is just a simple condition, right? We're going to keep adding time to this. Okay, so we're going to add 0.05 seconds. I found that that looked smooth without getting problems, because if I put numbers that are too small in this, the time gap is not quite working. Don't ask me why. Actually, what I'm going to do, I'll actually type here and say make literal float. I'm going to type 0.05. Alright, now I'll show you why. So, and how I'm going to do, alright, so what I'm doing, I'm going to assign this to 0. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this amount to it. Okay? And I'm going to check if this amount, when you add it together, I'm going to check, I'm going to take it, and I'm going to divide it by whatever the default maximum time should be. So we're going to get a number between 0 and 1. Okay? We're going to check if it's less than 1. Now here's where the magic starts. Okay? Alright. So, if this is less than 1, what it will do is it'll take this value right here. It's going to take this value, so it's going to take whatever it was before. It's going to add this new value to it, and then we're going to assign it now to this local float. That way it'll increment it. So it's going to check, is it less than 1? Alright, increment that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to delay it by the exact same amount of time. So that way it's going to increment it by that time, and it's going to delay that exact same time. So that way these are kind of on track. Okay. Then after it delays that very small time, it's going to come over here, and it's going to use the float curve. Okay. And what I'm just going to throw this all the way up here, just because it looks a lot nicer. Okay. Now that's this float curve. I probably should have showed you what these were first before I did all this, but oh well, just winging it. Now the float curve. Under testing, what I did was I made 2. Okay. Now here's what these are. You're gonna go over to, you're gonna right click, go to miscellaneous curves, and what I'm using is a vector curve to show you the difference. This float curve, basically, if I just open this up, you'll see it's just basically a graph. I can add a key. I can put this here, add another key, put that there, can add another key, put that there. Alright? So basically you have a value in here, some sort of time it's calling it. This is really just an input value. So it's you know, your basic X and Y sort of thing. So that, you know, time 0, this should be 0, 0, that's the first point. And then what it's gonna do is as time increases, this is the value you should be getting it. Like it should be reading it almost as if it's like a data table kind of thing. You know, like you're putting in a function x equals this, or y equals x plus something, minus, subtract, all that. And you're going to get an actual value, right? And we're going to actually return this, the value on the curve, is what we're trying to return. And we can do other things, we can bend it, kind of manipulate the shape a little bit. Come over here to this one, bend that, kind of manipulate the shape, make it work out where we need to. Okay. Rearrange that, all that, right? And that's what that's for. Now the other ones do something similar. So if I come over here, if I have the vector one, it's basically just like that, only it's a 3D vector. So you might want to lock these. So now we only have x displayed. So I go right here, there. This will be the x curve. I'm gonna lock that. Let me get my y out. So I'm gonna start that off right down there. I can go negative if I want to, but you see how this is going, right? See that? Lock that. Now we're gonna get the z out. We'll do this, and that, and that, and that. there goes that. Now if I do that to all of them, I just kind of got a point on all of these right there that I can play around with. There, see. That's what that does, and then the last one is mainly for colors. But if you see this, all it really does is it kind of just adds an red, blue, green, and it adds an alpha. Basically a vector with a 4D vector, I guess you can say, or yeah, 4D vector, basically. So you got that. You know, you have those to play with. Now, how I'm using this, all right? What I have decided was that when I was making this, that the X is the O open mouth form, the Y is the W mouth form, and the Z is kind of the sadness or happiness expression. And what I did was I just kind of said, okay, all of these need to be between 0 and 1. Okay, that's very important. Everything you do here needs to be between 0 and 1. The reason why is because we're actually gonna put a ratio in. Okay, and I'll show you how that works in a second. So we're just gonna do that. I kind of did whatever just to kind of see how it would look, kind of mixing around with facial expressions. The O shape looked okay between -1 and -1, but this sorry, the W shape was the W shape was okay between -1 and 1. The O shape kind of was good at 1, but once you got lower than 0.25, it started looking funky. So I kind of didn't include that. So if I go back to this, like right here, if you look here at this guy, right, at 1 that's fine for the O shape. If I come all the way down, that doesn't look good. So what I said was, okay, 0.25, that's the best I can do. Once I start getting lower than that, it's gonna start, I guess I could have go down to 0.5. So -0.5. -0.5 is really the lowest I can go. Even still, probably right about here is probably the lowest I can go before it starts looking all weird. So then for this one, that's perfectly fine. That's acceptable. And then this one, going all the way down does not look good. Going all the way up doesn't look as good. So just kind of a little bit off, like either direction is okay. That's what I did with that. So when you're doing that, that's what you want to think about when you're doing this. So like that O shape, again, right up here is the maximum at 1. It can hit 1 each time, but it can't really go down. Like this 50, or is it? Oh, it's at 5. Sorry, it's at 0.5. That 0.5 right here, you can't really go below that. Once you start going below that, it's gonna look weird. And then for that O shape, no, W shape. Notice again, it could go between 1 and -1. That's perfectly fine. And then the Z, I'd kind of brought it down because I didn't want the facial expression to kind of look weird, and also I want it to be kind of more slight as it's talking, nothing too fancy. And then what I did was I just did that again. Okay, this one was just kind of more experiment, just kind of see how the facial expressions will look, just kind of see how it is. All right. Now that's all that. Now, with the monkey. So then what I did from there, right, I have this ratio right here essentially, and I incremented it. I'm keeping track of the time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take that ratio and I'm going to take the curve, because this one's going to be a vector curve, right? So just break off that, get vector value, and you're going to input that. So that's why we're putting in a ratio. So this is basically how long it's going to be talking, you know? We're going to put that in there. So that way it comes down here. We're going to figure out at what time what values are the X, Y, and Z. We're going to break that. The open O is going to be your X, the Y is going to be the W, and the last one's going to be the Z for the sadness value. And what I'm doing is I'm taking the mesh, and I'm actually setting each morph target as needed. Okay? And that's going through. And then the last thing is if it's greater than 1, greater than or equal to 1 at least, then that means we finished the dialogue, like that dialogue audio or text display, so it's switching over to cycling to the next thing that needs to do. We need to clear it. That way he has no like weird facial expressions. He's back to normal, and we're done. Okay, that's what that does. So then what we're doing is back over here in the dialogue component, we have this first one I made and the second one. So I'll show you the first one. Alright, so if I go over here, notice how kind of exaggerated the face is? Okay. Now if I switch over to the second one, notice the face is a little more slight. The lip motion is a little more. You see that? So the idea is, you kind of would want several of these, not just one or two. You know, because you want to kind of match it and say, okay, what you might want to do is get a rough idea and say, okay, how long are each text going to be? Okay, how many characters are going to be on the screen? You know, how long are all the audio is going to be, and kind of have an idea of that. So that way you say, okay, the maximum length for all of these would be 5 minutes. We'll have like, you know, like if you're well, maybe not 5 minutes. If you're planning this out, you say like you have one that takes like 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, or whatever, and then make these charts depending on that. So then you know, okay, when you're setting these up in the conversation, what you would do is on the sub. What you would do is you come here and say, okay, under these answers, let me actually not do this here. Let me do it in one of the test ones. You would come here. Oh, come on. You would come here, right? And I did not actually create a one for that. Okay, that's right. But you would have another slot here, right? So you would hit it and say, okay, how long is the voice? How long is this recording going to be? You find the recording, you throw it in, and then you look and say, okay, this is the animation, got that. Then you'd have another one and say, okay, how long is recording? Then you'd find, like, say if it takes like 5 seconds, and you would want to find the chart that whichever vector chart would take 5 seconds. That way it kind of lines up just for generic conversations. And if you want some more detailed facial expressions for specific characters and important dialogue, you would do that. But that would be separate. Alright? So that's just some ideas to kind of play around with. Hope this has been interesting. So if you guys haven't already, try to like and subscribe. Help me out a little bit, you know. And see you guys next time.